The masculine evolution doesn't happen through noise or external achievement. It begins quietly, through control, discipline, and a decision to stop leaking what was meant to build you. When a man retains, something ancient awakens. His posture changes, his focus sharpens, and his presence grows heavier without effort. Evolution isn't about becoming something new. It's about returning to the state you were always designed to operate from. Clear, grounded, and driven by a force that doesn't beg for validation. Semen retention triggers the systems responsible for this shift. Testosterone rises, dopamine stabilizes, and the nervous system strengthens. Together, these forces shape a version of you that can carry weight without breaking. This is where the idea of peak energy evolution begins. There's a level of energy that doesn't just give you stamina. It gives you purpose. And once you hit that level, your thinking changes. You stop chasing and start choosing. Retention isn't just a biological act, it's a psychological reprogramming. It makes you slower to anger, faster to act, and impossible to ignore. The energy that used to scatter outward is now held within you, pressurized into something far more powerful: direction. This isn't about control for control's sake. It's about refining the energy that drives evolution, turning instinct into leadership, your force into precision. The rest of your evolution unfolds from there. Section 1. Neurotrophic Gene Expression. Semen retention doesn't just change how you feel. It alters how your body speaks to itself at the genetic level. Every habit leaves a footprint in your biology, and this one is no exception. When you stop draining yourself, your body begins to repair. Inflammation drops. Cortisol levels stop spiking. Oxidative stress quiets down. These aren't just surface-level changes. They affect the chemical signals that control your genes. Epigenetic markers. These markers don't rewrite your DNA, but they decide which parts of it get turned on or silenced. And the discipline of retention pushes that switchboard toward clarity, strength, and long-term vitality. The most powerful shift happens in the brain, areas like the hippocampus, responsible for memory, and the prefrontal cortex, responsible for judgment, foresight, and self-control, become more active. That's because retention increases neurotrophic factors, proteins that help neurons grow, connect, and stay alive. These aren't temporary boosts. With time and consistency, they shape your brain for a sharper, more stable form of masculine intelligence. You start remembering more. You judge less. You control your emotional storms instead of being pulled under by them. These are not soft traits. They are the foundation of long-term power, leadership, and strategy. Most people think semen retention is just about hormones, but it's far more layered. You're not just influencing testosterone. You're flipping genetic switches. Your biology begins to act in accordance with your behavior. And because epigenetic changes can be passed down through sperm, your discipline today could shape the neural architecture of your future children. This means your daily choice to retain isn't just preserving your energy. It's writing a manual for mental resilience that your bloodline might carry. You're not just protecting your future. You're upgrading it before it arrives. This is how masculinity becomes generational, not through words or appearances, but through biology that remembers. The restraint you show now is recorded not just in your memory, but in your cells. When you're retaining, you're transmitting discipline, clarity, and focus at a molecular level. That energy has weight. It doesn't vanish. It embeds itself in your expression, your thoughts, and possibly even your offspring. This isn't about control. It's about alignment with the ancient systems that built men who could endure, lead, and pass on more than just a name. You're not just shifting your mindset. You're editing the code that shapes it. Retention doesn't shout. It rewires. It tells your body to stop surviving and start refining. And slowly, quietly, the machine of your biology responds. It tightens, sharpens, adjusts. You're not who you were a month ago. Not because you read something or felt inspired, but because your own body decided to evolve. That's what makes this practice different. It doesn't just influence your behavior. It teaches your biology how to lead. And once that switch flips, there's no going back.
Section 2. Psychological evolution. The psychological evolution that takes place through retention isn't clean or predictable. It doesn't rise like a straight line. It breaks, it burns, and it rebuilds. In the beginning, most men don't realize how much they rely on the release, not just physically, but emotionally. That release becomes a shortcut, a quick way to avoid dealing with boredom, rejection, fear, or inadequacy. It becomes the invisible crutch used to escape discomfort. When that option is removed, what surfaces is not just restlessness, but a confrontation with who you've been without even noticing. Retention brings the truth up like a mirror with no filter. And that's where the real shift begins. You're no longer asking, "How do I feel?" You're asking, "What have I been running from?" This is when the psychological structures to change. The brain begins using different regions to make sense of reality. The anterior cingulate cortex activates quietly but consistently. That part of the brain is responsible for self-monitoring, for recognizing when your actions are misaligned with your own code. It doesn't just correct behavior. It refines identity. You're no longer reacting from impulse. You're choosing from principle. Slowly, the image of the man who chases pleasure breaks apart, and something stronger takes his place. This process isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. With every urge you resist, you're not just building discipline. You're proving to yourself that you're in control, that your standard matters more than your moment. And once that mindset clicks, retention stops feeling like restraint. It starts feeling like a standard you refuse to betray. That's where psychological evolution takes hold. Not when you no longer feel the urge, but when the urge no longer decides who you are. You start seeing everything around you. Distraction, temptation, approval as tools, not goals. You stop performing. You start constructing. Retention becomes less about streaks and more about identity. You begin carrying yourself like someone who knows his value doesn't come from how quickly he can feel good, but from how consistently he can hold his frame. This shift affects how you speak, how you choose relationships, how you approach challenges. People around you sense the change, even if they can't explain it. You're not louder. You're just grounded, and that groundedness makes you dangerous in a world addicted to shortcuts. You become the man whose power doesn't come from proving anything, but from protecting what he refuses to compromise. By the time the transformation settles in, you realize it was never about avoiding temptation. It was about becoming someone temptation can't move. Retention shows you the difference between control and presence. And in that space, you build something few men ever touch, a standard that reflects not your potential, but your promise. You become the architect of your behavior, not the product of your cravings. And from that place, your life stops being a reaction. It becomes a statement. A man who lives by principle, not impulse, no longer chases power. He becomes it. Section 3. Energetic authority. There's a type of presence that can't be faked. It walks into a room before you speak, lingers even after you leave, and shifts the energy of those nearby without needing to prove itself. This isn't a trick or a trait, it's energetic authority, and it begins when your system stops leaking power. Semen retention creates a steady internal current, one that stabilizes your biochemistry and sharpens your nervous system. What some call aura is more than mysticism, it's biophysical. Your body emits subtle electrical signals, and those signals become stronger, cleaner, and more consistent when you retain. It's not about being seen. It's about being registered on a level people don't even know they're reacting to. As your testosterone stabilizes and the fight or flight reflex calms, the body's electromagnetic field becomes more coherent. Tools like heart rate variability and skin conductance response can track these changes. You're not just becoming more composed, you're becoming more legible to the people around you. Your frequency stops flickering. Eye contact becomes magnetic. Voice tone settles into something deeper, slower, more certain. People start responding without knowing why. They lean in when you speak. They hesitate before interrupting. Not because you demanded attention, but because your signal carries weight. The chaos in your body is gone, and what remains is direction. This shift turns perception into power. You're no longer just another presence in the room. You're a reference point. Calm, rooted, and quietly unshakable. Retention makes this possible not through posturing, but through regulation, internal clarity felt on a non-verbal level. When you hold your energy, you stop chasing external reactions. You let your nervous system speak first, and it does. Through posture, eye stillness, breath control, and energetic density, you evolve from being noticed to being felt, not because you shout louder, but because you finally carry something the world isn't used to anymore: undiluted self-command.